230, on the next page, on page 3. It's called Italian Padroni, Delinquency Prevention, Ethnic Identity, and the Church. And we have three scholars who are here with us today. Kirby Pringle, who's actually out in Los Angeles finishing, just now as a candidate, finishing his dissertation in history here at Loyola University. We're going to have our second speaker, Anthony Mansueto, is an associate professor of global studies at the University of the District of Columbia. And then we're going to bring back Mickey Lombardo. Dr. Lombardo is going to continue what he began this morning. So I'm going to ask them each to come up one at a time, perhaps. And then when we have some time for questions, if all three of them can sit up here, okay? So we'll invite Kirby to the podium.
Good afternoon. I'm going to be showing some slides and also reading an excerpt of my dissertation. I think it speaks to a lot of different presentations here, so I usually don't read papers actually, but it's kind of narrative driven in life, so hopefully that puts some struggling skills. What I wrote about actually is an actor, Gino Corrado. However, I've extrapolated the 2 years he was in Chicago, before moving to Los Angeles, to Hollywood actually. And so I'm not going to be talking much about his acting, much about him. I'm actually talking about his father and his uncle. His uncle who stayed here in Chicago for many years. And I'll tell you briefly his story in just a second. So I probably should have changed Gino Corrado, taking him out of this little story, but it's kind of told from his point of view. So anyways, bear with me here. Gino Corrado was born Eugenio Corrado Licerani on February 9th, 1893 in Italy. Anything written about the actor always mentions his birthplace as Florence. In fact, Gino himself proudly claimed Florence as his birth city. However, records show that he was actually born in Pisa, in the region of Tuscany, about 40 miles from Florence. This may have been because his parents returned to Italy from traveling to the United States just 2 weeks before his birth, if Gino's latest studio publicity is to be believed. In any case, Gino's family was based in Florence, and unlike so many underprivileged rural immigrants from the south of Italy who immigrated to America, some members of his family were upper class and many of his relatives were professionals. Many of his kin were international traders, such as one relative, an uncle of Gino, who imported American goods into Florence and traded currency. Gino's grandfather, Carlo Licerani, he also had a father, Carlo Licerani, was a merchant and exhibitor at international fairs. More than simply trade shows, these international events focused on modernity by exhibiting science and technology. However, these spectacles also drew from a classical tradition of ancient pageantry that celebrated empires such as that of ancient Rome, where roads and political stability could attract international visitors to a major event. It is significant to note, he became an actor and a sculptor before that. It is significant to note that these fairs often featured architecture, massive and opulent, and in the latter part of the 19th century, the latest motion picture equipment in its most primitive stages, beginning with rudimentary photography and cycloramas. In Australia, at the Sydney International Exhibit of 1879, Carlo Licerani was a representative agent of Italy. When the new Italian nation, only being truly unified since 1871, could not finance the Italian exhibit, Licerani, along with a financial partner, delivered over the works of the preeminent artist of Florence himself. He also brought a shipload of goods that included mosaics, filigree work in gold and silver, wood carving, marble statues, and Italian wines. The local newspaper stated that the determination and expense of the two chief exhibitors, quote, entitled their efforts to our respect, unquote, and reported that the mosaic tables in the Italian court section of the exhibition halls received more attention than any other piece of art at the entire fair. One could surmise that the exhibits were somewhat successful as Licerani returned to Australia for several other fairs, including the Jubilee International Exhibition in Adelaide, Australia in 1887. Licerani worked the Centennial International Exhibit in 1888 and 1889. It was the largest public event attempted in Australian history at that time. Over 2 million people attended this event, which celebrated the arrival of European civilization and intercolonial cooperation between Britain and Australia. At the United States exhibit at the lavish six-part fair in Melbourne, Lisserani may have viewed the popular displays of the new electric Singer sewing machine that would have revolutionized ready-wear clothing, the gasoline engine, or Thomas A. Edison's photograph machine, along with art galleries and from a multitude of nations at other exhibit halls. In April 1893, 2 months after Gino Lisserani was born, his 24-year-old father, who had the same name as Gino's grandfather, Carlo Lisserani, traveled from the Italian port of Genoa to Chicago. The ship's passage records indicate that Gino's father's occupation was a marble merchant. On ship, he had his own private quarters, but seemed to be traveling with 3 other marble dealers whose last residence was, like his, Palermo, Sicily. In the nearby rooms, the occupations of many of these sojourners were tied in some way with marble, either an artist, sculptor, engraver, stonecutter, or, as in Lisserani's case, he's a marble dealer, or they were a marble dealer. Many other passengers were from Genoa or Naples, but a large portion were Tuscans, several from the cities of Florence or Pisa, but most hailed from Carrara, the town and quarry that fed Chicago's appetite for the best marble that showed the town's namesake. When Lisserani visited Chicago, it was experiencing an economic boom and had a large Italian population of almost 20,000, which would rapidly grow to 100,000 by 1910. Lisserani would have found that Italians from his city of Florence had a strong presence and become successful in the metropolis. In 1871, only 2 decades before the visit of Gino's father, the disastrous Chicago fire swept through a large part of the city. In the aftermath of the tragedy, Joseph Meadow successfully ran for mayor as part of a fireproof party platform that assured voters of new stringent fire safety codes, such as prohibiting wooden structures. Some city leaders looked to the city of Florence as a model of fire-resistant masonry. The Chicago Times rejoiced when the vice consul of Italy, who represented Chicago's growing Italian population, reported that the desires of our citizens to erect substantial fireproof buildings for the future has induced about 30 of the best masons of Florence and other large cities of Italy to embark for this country, and they have now arrived in Chicago. The preferred building materials used in constructing luxury steel frame buildings were granite, terracotta, tile, brick, and marble. Of the latter ingredient used for opulence, the highest quality was the white Carrara marble from Tuscany. In fact, the same ancient Carrara quarry which gave the stone its namesake had supplied the marble for the Michelangelo statue in Italy more than a millennium earlier. Lisserani would have learned that most of the first Italian immigrants to be established in Chicago had been Genoese merchants, but Tuscans were also early arrivals. The Italian immigrants that came to Chicago from the Tuscany region where the Lisseranis were from were usually artisans. One of the 5 Italians listed in the 1854 Chicago City Directory, a Tuscan from Lucca, had been a maker and vendor of plaster statues, a figurante in Italian. In 1870s, John and Charles De Prato, brothers from Lucca, who would form the De Prato Statue Company, were located at Clark and Van Buren, and from here would become the world's largest producer of religious art. Other artisans from the Lucca area branched out into ornamental stucco, gold leaf, and frescoes, and whose work became the vogue in all the leading theaters and homes of Chicago. Another Tuscan, Giovanni Melli, and his son Vincent have been the sculptors of the bas-relief and statuary of the Palmer House, the home of Chicago's leading musicians. It is probable, I gotta warn you, there's a lot of conjecture and whatnot. It is probable that Lisserani's business had something to do with the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago that opened in May of 1893. He came in April, as it included massive construction. The Manufacturers and Liberal Arts Building, for instance, was 3 times larger than St. Peter's Cathedral and 4 times that of the Colosseum in Rome, and cost $1.5 million to build. The marble needed reportedly cost, just for this one building, $118,000. Another building constructed for the fair, the Palace of the Fine Arts, surely used a large amount of Italian craftsmen by the scale of the project. 50,000 square feet of Italian marble and 20 acres of plaster. Over 12,000 workmen were used in its construction, but the exact number of Italians involved in the construction of the fair's building is unknown. There were at least enough workers to form one on-site Italian local, the Ornamental Plasterers and Shop Hands Union, which seemed to disband once the construction of the fair was completed, but not before donating the $140 in their treasury to a local Catholic hospital. The World's Columbian Exhibition in Chicago was America's greatest architectural event at the time, and assembled an unparalleled number of sculptors in one place not seen since the Renaissance. The fair would serve as a training ground for America's leading sculptors, despite a material called staff, not marble, that was often substituted for the expensive stone. After the fair ended, commissions for ornamental sculpture on buildings and public statuary never came to fruition. Despite trade unions demanding a campaign of public works, sculptors vacated Chicago. In fact, Licerani would leave and return a few years later. Still, several of Chicago's public buildings commissioned in the early 1890s required several tons of Carrara marble for statuary and staircases. The World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago had also provided the newest in technological advancements, and an Englishman by the name of Edward Muybridge had erected his zoographical hall, where his stereopticon showed animals in motion. One maker of optical lenses from Philadelphia and future movie pioneer Sigmund Lubin marveled at the camera that captured a horse in stride and remembered later that, quote, "I decided to experiment with that idea then." Gino first came to America as a toddler in 1895 with his mother, Caterina Tessitori Licerani. 4 months later, ship's passage records show that Carlo Licerani, now simply listed as a negociante, a businessman, but had briefly returned to Italy, made the 10-day trek to America once more to meet his wife and child. The couple settled in New York City, and for a few years they lived near Carlo Licerani's brother Cyrus, Ciro, who himself had recently arrived in America and was newly married to a young woman from Ireland. However, Gino's parents soon moved around the eastern seaboard, first to Boston for 2 years, where the oldest of Gino's siblings, Luigi, also known later as Louis, was born in 1896. In 1899, Carlo, sometimes going by Charles, and Caterina, 7-year-old Gino, and his 3 little brothers, who were all American citizens by birth, were now living in Hartford, Connecticut. The newest additions to Gino's family were Corrado, born in Hartford in 1898, and Lawrence, born in 1900, also in Hartford. Carlo Licerani would support the family by working as a painter, according to the city director. A contemporary social scientist reported that a considerable number of farms abandoned by the Yankees who go west to enter business in the city have been occupied by Italians in the western part of the state of New York and in Connecticut River Valley. In New York, Massachusetts, and Connecticut, over 500 farms were estimated to have been occupied by Italians, mainly northern Italians, despite their small numbers. They were only 20% of the total Italian population as compared to southern Italians. In the county area that surrounded Hartford, particularly South Glastonbury, several hundred northern Italians had purchased farms where they raised fruit, peaches and apples, became a leading exclusive northern Italian occupation. Became a leading exclusive northern Italian occupation to be protected against from the numerically superior southern Italians, evidenced by the formation of northern Italian societies and eventually by the North Italy Fruit Growers Union, an anti-Sicilian trade organization. Noticing the tremendous growth of American cities and realizing the profit from marketing produce from the surrounding lands, a few northern Italians had actually partnered with Americans in the purchase of large orchards. As the head of the household, Carlo Licerani, too, seems to have tried his luck as a fruit dealer, leaving the city and basing his operation in Canton Township in the highly industrialized Hartford County, which was dotted with large factories and mostly metalworks. He may have represented local Italian fruit growers in the Italian markets at the Front Street section of Hartford, as well as the larger marketplace of New York and Boston. In 1895, Gino's uncle, Corrado Licerani Trevisani, had also journeyed to America from Florence and made residence in Chicago. As a merchant, he voyaged to America frequently and may have been enticed by Gino's father to reside in Chicago, though a year later he was living in St. Louis. Carlo probably joined his brother a few years later when they set up a women's clothing business, which ultimately went bankrupt in St. Louis. In 1904, Carlo Licerani again traveled from Italy and indicated in ship's logs that his final destination was St. Louis, Missouri, to meet his brother. 2 months before the opening of the St. Louis World's Fair of 1904, one could surmise that given his previous work, this would be in some connection with the fair's Italian pavilion. While there, the brothers would have witnessed the construction of Union Station, which was expanded to be the largest train station in the country to anticipate visitors to the fair. Many of these seasonal immigrant workers who toiled on Union Station were from southern Italy, most being recently arrived Sicilians who numerically altered a city that had been, prior to 1900, the largest Milanese community outside of Lombardy. It is possible that it was here, with all the employment agents and Padroni, that's work bosses, making fast money, that the brothers, having recently had a few financial setbacks, got the idea of being middlemen on the railroad. As for Gino, he and his youngest brother, also named Corrado, would be sent back to Florence to stay with their grandparents. Keeping with the family tradition in which at least one member of the family would serve the church, the obedient son was chosen by his family to join the priesthood. As a result, at an early age, Gino was sent to Strada in Consentino, a local Jesuit seminary. 30 miles from Florence, the medieval ecclesiastical Tuscan village of Strada in Consentino, with its picturesque wooded hills, castles, and encircling walls, may have been the setting where Gino received his first training in the arts, since drama was traditionally taught in the Jesuit education system. Craftsmanship is what Tuscany was renowned for, and Strada and Consentino had a quarry and stone carving industry, with methods of sculpting dating to ancient times. If nothing else, the environment would have inspired a young boy to have a solid appreciation of art. One of his tutors, apparently an illegitimate son of opera star Enrico Caruso, who would travel back and forth to New York for business, may have also taught him a love of music and familiarized him with urban America. At the age of 15, the future actor returned to the United States, accompanied by his uncle Corrado and his wife Emma, Gino's aunt. The family entered Ellis Island and quickly made their way to Chicago, where the rest of the surrounding family had been living. Generally, immigration to America and contact with different dialects and customs only exasperated regional biases and distinctions for many Italians. The settlement was generally by region. This area in Chicago, known as the Near North, had been the home of Tuscans who worked as mainly shopkeepers and fruit peddlers, with those from Lucca nearer to 637 North Clark, where he lived, where the family lived, and indicative of Gino's environment, mainly working as plaster workers in the neighboring statuary shops. Young Gino, however, would continue his training for the priesthood and was enrolled in St. Bede College, a Benedictine Catholic seminary school in Peru, Illinois. It's about 50 miles from here. He was listed as Gino Licerani in the Register of Students in the 1908 academic year. Since Gino apparently entered the school in mid-semester, his grades were never recorded, but it is indicated that Gino was focusing on Latin and Greek and won an award, distinction in vocal music. The 1908 school catalog describes its goals and its training. It says, it is the ambition of the college to set forth young men educated in the fullest sense of the word, pure, sober, industrious, self-respecting men, men of well-formed habits, fearless in the defense of honor, truth, justice, loyal to country, church, and God. In a short publicity piece that Gino made as an actor several decades later, he claims that he was disenrolled from St. Bede when his father purchased a vaudeville house in Chicago. The $100 semester tuition became too much of a burden, and the youth withdrew from school. Besides his investment in vaudeville, Gino's father may have also become a partner in another firm, that of his brothers, as Corrado Trevisani had become a Chicago Padroni, a labor boss, and opened an agency. In 1907, Gino's uncle opened shop in Little Italy, as it was known, at 384 North Clark Street, and 1 year later made a jump to a more prime location at 101 South Canal Street to partner with an individual named Clarence Bishop. And in 1909, he was the sole agent at 30 South Canal. Soon after, Trevisani was a partner with Gino's father. Brothers, that was confusing. There's like 4 Corrados in this story. Since Gino may have been sent to seminary with a loan from his uncle, who was already well established in Chicago, this is conjecture, the needed capital for the startup operation may be one explanation for Gino's removal from the school. Many Padroni, that's with an I at the end, it's the superior to rural southern Italians. Most Padroni were unlicensed, but were bilingual and connected with American employers. These labor bosses could send Italian immigrants to all regions of the United States. Padroni often encouraged Italians to seek employment with their agency in America through letters and advertisements, or, this is an important point, sometimes they would send representatives to meet immigrants right off the boat, or would partner with steamship operators and recruit labor in Italian villages. Thus, the Padroni played a major part in encouraging immigration and was skilled at getting through customs and settling the newly arrived. Gino said of his father's profession in an interview that I had with him, he said, the Italians, the mafia, used to go to his office, that's his dad's office, and lay $1,000 on his desk and say, Gino Corrado, I want my sister-in-law in the next shipment coming from Italy, or my brother-in-law, and so and so. Carlo Lisserani left the business a couple years once his family arrived, or as Gino would later spin in an interview, my father gave up his diplomatic work. Corrado Trevisani, however, stayed on for another few years and seems to have made a sizable income. Chicago became the ultimate Padroni center due to its geographical location and being a railroad hub. As labor agents and often intermediaries for Italian muscle for the railroads and other industries, Padroni had the opportunity to make a handsome profit from non-union labor. The Italian-language Chicago newspaper La Parola dei Socialisti decried the use of such anti-union tactics to exploit cheap labor, and painted a portrait of Padroni's devices in setting up shop. It says, then at the corner, one awaits prey at leisure. He has previously corresponded with some company that is building a railroad line, a bridge, a tunnel, or an aqueduct, and wants laborers shipped to some distant solitary place to be supervised by slave-driving bosses, far from the surveillance of the law. Our poor countrymen usually congregate in groups of 5, 6, 10, 20, or 50. He makes them believe that he rejected 200 or 300 Slavs or Greeks in order to reserve the good jobs for the Italians. This is at least one instance of a Padrone whose swindling brought retribution from his victims. One such was an Americanized Italian that allegedly collected a fee of $1 from each Italian needing work by promising jobs on the Grand Trunk Railroad, but failed to deliver. Spotted enjoying a picture show in Chicago, presumably thanks to their hard-earned money, upon his exit of the theater he was beaten by a waiting mob of 40 Italians. In a business often considered to be unethical, it is not known what Corrado Trevisani's motives or ethics were beyond monetary. However, his employment business model was his business was highly visible with his name listed in the business section of the city directory. He was one of the only few, actually one of two, Italians to do so. Interestingly, while he was moving workers to distant sites, he was also moving family members. Of the surviving correspondence from Gino's youth, one letter indicates his youngest brother, Corrado, was still in Italy at the age of 10. Gino, who played the violin himself, seems to have been concerned with his little brother's violin lessons. The future actor's parents had left the boy with his grandparents back in Florence. In a postcard dated April 10, 1909, Gino's little brother wrote, Dear Gino, I awaited your news and received nothing, but I hope that your health is good. I am well, and so are the grandparents, especially now given the better weather. However, we underwent a tremendous winter. I assure you, however, that I remain in perfect health throughout. My violin playing is proceeding adequately. Farewell, and a big embrace. Your brother, Corrado. Writes him. When his grandmother died on March 26, 1910, the boy was shuffled around. Tragedy befell Gino when his 12-year-old brother died January 2, 1911, in Italy. In a tragic letter dated shortly before the boy's death, Gino's uncle, Corrado Trevisani, wrote to his brother Carlo. He said, My words are insufficient to express to you our great sorrow for the unexpected news of the death of your poor Corrado. 2 months have gone by since we left him in Italy in good health, and never would we have conceived of a similar catastrophe. Emma, his wife, and I weep with you over the loss of little Corrado. And in this moment of irreparable grief, we send you our most sincere condolences. I am immensely saddened in thinking that you attribute this fatality to my having advised that the boy be sent to boarding school, and I wish to explain everything to you so that you may consider and verify all that I write to you. First of all, you need to know that the moment Emma and I arrived in Italy, Father was of the opinion that upon return we should take the boy with us back to Chicago. I told him that I would do all that you require, but that other than that, I would not take responsibility. Then we received your letter in which you requested that we should absolutely not send the boy to America. Father replied to you, indicating that due to his advanced age and certain other concerns, he could in no way take care of the boy, and that if you did not want him, then he would send him to an institution. We saw your response where you authorized him to do so. Our sisters and I wished to keep the boy in the house, but the housekeeper took offense and threatened to terminate her service if the boy remained. During the 3 months that I was home, I had to swallow much to the point that finally, in tears, I told Father that I regretted having come to Italy and that I could not wait to leave again. And all this because of that dirty housekeeper gallivanting about. Why the boy was time? Okay. So I'll just end with that. Okay. I just wanted to show. I got time to show a couple slides. Okay. So I just want to talk about Italian immigration, and generally, when I teach history, I talk about the support network, family, chain immigration, friends, the church, mutual aid societies. Of course, a lot of Italian mutual aid societies that will provide assistance to those in need. But the Padroni, I think, is underrepresented. Generally, a Padroni, if you don't know, is like a work boss, a big man. They're the intermediary between industry and could supply Italian immigrants. Before 1910, a Padroni was often Northern Italian, literate, and spoke English, while the workers were often Southern Italian, rural, illiterate, and spoke dialect. They did not know English. The key is the English part. Okay, so they recruited labor directly from Italy, which I think is very important when you think of immigration. They're going, a lot of them started out as steamship agents, would go to Italy and recruit. I would suspect, I don't have to prove this, but sometimes whole villages would go based on flyers from the steamship agents that were essentially Padronis. A lot of them were able to loan out money or form banks. They amassed a lot of capital, and they controlled wages. This is where you have the sort of abuse of power here occasionally. Controlled wages, contracts, and the food supply. They had a bad reputation with social scientists. Often when we read, we find Padronis characterized as being very unethical and whatnot. I don't think that's the case all the way around, however. Carlo Lisserani, who worked as a Padroni, here's some of his statistics. Born in Florence, was the manager along with his dad at several World's Fairs. His brother Corrado, was an importer and currency. I'm sorry, no, that's wrong. His brother Luigi was an importer and currency exchanger. So there's two Luigis in the story. He had experience with Southern labor. I mentioned he worked in Sicily, actually, as a harbor merchant. And his brother, Corrado, actually amassed enough money to start a business in Chicago that was the Italian Antiques Gallery, across from the Drake Hotels. Anyone heard of that by any chance? You have? Oh, wow, okay. Well, I'd love to talk to you about that. Wow, okay. I have some letterhead and correspondence from there. Okay, wow. And again, he advertised in the directory, which to me means he was likely licensed. I have a lot of correspondence from the Lisserani family. Not too much from Chicago. There's a picture of Gino Corrado, who I wrote about. Now, he looks familiar. He is the winger